Hey there, welcome to the Posit Data Science Hangout. I'm Libby Heron, and this is a recording of our weekly community call that happens every Thursday at 12 p.m. US Eastern Time. If you are not joining us live, you miss out on the amazing chat that's going on. So find the link in the description where you can add our call to your calendar and come hang out with the most supportive, friendly, and funny data community you'll ever experience. Can't wait to see you there. I am so excited to welcome our featured leader for today, Ross Farrugia, Data and Insights Engineering Product Family Lead at Roche slash Genentech. And I will let him explain what that slash Genentech means. Ross, would you like to unmute and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you do and also what you like to do for fun.
Sure. Hi, Vivi. Thanks for having me along. So, yeah, the Slash Genentech is our kind of US company, but we merged with Roche many years back now. So, most of the folks in US will have known Genentech, but you might not have heard of Roche so much because it's a Swiss company. In the rest of the world, and especially in Europe, Roche is a lot bigger name. So, yeah, it's Roche slash Genentech. So, my role involves supporting, kind of overseeing a lot of data science tooling in the clinical reporting space. So, all of the tooling that we use for analysis about clinical trials. So I sponsor packages in the R open source space, such as Admiral, or maybe people have heard of Teal for helping to create shiny visualizations. And in my spare time, apart from chasing around my young children, I like to play football or soccer, as the US folks would call it. Yeah, that's my main passion.
Awesome. And I feel like I don't know if I heard you say this in your intro, but if you didn't mention it, you're one of the co-founders of Pharmaverse.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anybody hasn't heard of Pharmaverse, this is essentially an open source effort for the pharmaceutical industry to bring companies together who in the past we were all doing very similar things in this post-competitive space. So once the drugs have been identified, essentially you have to run the clinical trials and analyze the clinical trials, build the submission packages that are going to go to the health authorities. And we're lucky that we have very harmonized industry level standards from an organization called CDISC, but yet we were all still working in silos, doing very similar activity, but each company repeating the same work. So Pharmaverse was an effort built initially around R, but we're also open to Python and other open source languages. And we've grown to have 8 council companies involved. We have 400 code contributors. And in our community, we have almost 2,000 people and many more using our packages. So essentially, it's just bringing companies together to, instead of keeping repeating the same work independently, we now co-develop and share the build effort, share the maintenance effort, share the testing effort to build code, which is ultimately going to help to bring all drugs to patients a lot quicker in the future. And it's not just us that can use the solutions, also the health authorities are open to use them. So even helps to improve and accelerate the review and approval process.
This is a little bit of an answer to Mike's question in Slido. So, Mike, if you wanted to unmute and ask a little bit about this, because your question sort of expands a little bit on that.
Yeah, hi Ross. One question I had was like people might be familiar with a CRAN task view, where basically you're saying, here's a set of packages that are associated with a topic or, a specific data area. So how is Pharmaverse kind of different from a task view?
Yeah, it's a great question. I can actually, in the early days, from a lot of like the art traditionalists were saying, you just do a grand task view, that'll be enough. And yeah, it's a great question. What we realized though is in the early stage of our adoption across our industry, we needed a little bit more. We needed to build a community around this. And actually what we wanted, instead of having just packages where individuals from solo companies were kind of putting something out there, as well as I do in our industry, takes a little bit more for you to adopt and trust, right? So say Pfizer put out a package and my company, Roche, we would look at it and think, hey, do we really want to trust that? Do we really want to embed that in our workflows that are ultimately going to go towards submissions? But what about if we can come in and work with Pfizer and we can share the effort, we can become like co-license holders and ultimately share that IP it's a lot more likely then you know that you're going to take ownership and you're actually going to believe and trust that. And then it gets to the point where you have things like Admiral now, where we've got 10 co-development companies behind the Admiral package, and then companies that aren't even co-developers, they're more likely to trust it because they're saying, hey, Roche are never going to pull out now, or even if they do, there's 9 other companies there that are maintaining this. So with something like open source, where I think the fear is always that it's not going to be sustainable, and people are going to put something great out and there'll just be one person behind it. And then 6 months later, they'll find something new to attract their time, and then it disappears. With a community like Pharmaverse, for a start, if there is such a package, but we already like it, we can find members of the community that can help to maintain it. But generally, we prefer that from the start, these things are built with numerous companies, numerous individuals, and then you tend to get better solutions because they all bring their individual experience, and you build something that's not just fit for one, but potentially fit for all. I hope that helps.
Mhm. Yeah.
Awesome.
Can I ask a quick follow on, which is about
Absolutely, Mike.
curation? So do you have some curators or some kind of people providing a little bit of overview?
Yeah, we used to have working groups so dedicated to different areas like data engineering or tables and graphs, visualizations, and they would be the ones that would ultimately kind of decide what goes in the Pharmaverse. And we started off trying to be quite opinionated, right? We didn't want lots of repeat packages doing the same thing, things like that. Actually, over time, what we decided was let's just democratize this across our whole community. We've got like almost 2,000 people in this Slack. Let's let them all have a say. So now if anybody approaches us and they say, hey, I want to add my package to Pharmaverse, I'd like to come in and work with you, we open it up to the whole community to say, hey, do you like this? People comment, people say, oh, it would be really nice, you know, to fill this gap or to enhance it this way. And then quite often the maintainer of the package says, okay, come and be a contributor, come work with me. And yeah, it's kind of nice because a lot of the time what we're doing now is just connecting people across the industry that they were going to build that solution anyway. They didn't need us, but we can help them to supercharge it by bringing more people into that work. So it's become like it's lightly curated because as long as the community are happy, we're happy. We do have some inclusion criteria, of course, as well that we try to monitor. But yeah, generally it's becoming to the point where it doesn't need us so much now. Like in the early days, we were the ones kind of banging the drum and make sure. Now it's become like a really natural kind of ecosystem and a natural community, which is what we always hoped it would be.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for the great question. And thanks, Ross. We have a lot of questions that are about the Pharmaverse. So I'm wondering if we could maybe combine a couple of them. Um, I wanted to pull Lisa in because I know that this question is sort of the same lines that we've been talking about right now. But I want to engage the whole sort of community here in this and talk about this in the chat because Lisa's question is
Yeah,
a
I
little
mean,
bit more expansive.
yeah. So I was just curious about, I love this idea of sort of taking competing companies, but coming together to solve a common goal. And I would love to see this in other industries. So I'm just curious how the heck you did that.
How do you convince people from competing companies to be like,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll work on this together?
I mean, I
Yeah.
think I'm in the insurance industry right now, and I sort of can't imagine how that would happen. But I assume we might have some really similar, um, similarities.
Absolutely. So when we first spoke to our legal group actually, and leadership's another thing, company leadership, but we went to legal first because the first thing any company feels is, okay, what's your actual intellectual property? What's the stuff that, you know, is actually kind of making you money, right? And you don't want to ever open that up to others. And we had a really great IP expert lawyer, and he's very progressive thinking and very kind of an open source enthusiast. And the way that he talked us through is that, okay, what value is there to open sourcing? Are you by open sourcing, by bringing this together with other companies, are you ultimately gonna get more in return than what you invest? And we said, look, even if we do this and only one company across the whole of our industry steps up and gives what we're giving, then we cut our development and maintenance budget by 50%. So we just need one. So he said, okay, go find that one. Go find, someone who can meet you halfway, and let's give this a try. Let's make this, make a pitch to our leadership to show that this has potential. We were very lucky in that a colleague from GSK actually was on LinkedIn and was messaging similar and made a connection with somebody from my team. And it kind of snowballed from there. So we thought, okay, let's prove it. And the first piece that we really looked to do this in was a piece of work where we hadn't actually put pen to paper. We hadn't developed any code at that time. So it was like a no-risk strategy, right? Either it doesn't work and we're no worse off than when we started, or through working together as one team, not like, okay, we'll do half the work over here, you do half the work over there, and then we'll throw it over the fence. No, let's work openly together on public GitHub repo where we're all in it from the start, open from the start. And we were just amazed. Firstly, that one company really stepped up and met us halfway. But then what we did is we reached out to leaders from across the industry and said, hey, we have this idea. Would you be willing to bring people forwards? And you don't have to develop right now, but just test out what we're building. Tell us, is this suitable for your needs? And we asked a number of companies. We were amazed that like over 10 companies stepped up, and we ended up with like 40 people testing. We had thousands of comments, loads of like really useful things that helped us to kind of go. And this was just one package, and really helped us to go into that design. And from there, we started to reach out and understand, well, actually, there's already a number of other companies doing similar stuff in other areas of the work that we do that were also kind of interested. So it kind of like once you get one win, you show your leadership, they kind of buy in, they invest in you more, and you start to make more and more connections, and you find the like-minded people. There are going to be whatever industry, there are going to be people that believe in the greater good and that like a rising tide lifts all boats. Sometimes it's just finding them and having that time. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's like a little bit of the story of how we've gone. Does that help, Lisa?
I think that she might not be able to unmute herself to say thank you, but I think that the answer is yes, and I see some nodding. So I think that that's great. And this is definitely one of those things that is a problem across all industries. Not a problem, a challenge, right? Like how do we convince leadership of doing things that feels like giving away their IP or giving away power, giving away money, when it's good for everybody? All right. Thank you, Lisa, for the wonderful question. Let's see what other questions we have here. And don't forget, everybody, you have a question, place to ask your questions on Slido and also upvote other questions. So go scroll through what other people are asking. I wanted to ask a little bit of an industry question. So Abigail, you have a question here that is a little bit more industry focused. Would you like to ask that live? Oh, nope, you have an asterisk. I see that you added. Okay, I'm going to ask Abigail's question for her. Ross, what does career progression look like in your industry? Where can data scientists go for either leadership or IC roles? And I think this is a great question for you because I had the same question for you when I first talked to you. I was like, hey, were you in people leadership and now you're in like a more product or project leadership role? How did that happen? So maybe we could combine those together.
Yeah, it's a great question, and we get this a lot in our industry because it's quite a technical group, data scientists, but there's obviously a lot of kind of people leadership naturally needed. There's a lot of kind of project management tasks as well. So you can go numerous routes. We all tend to start with the technical route. We want to learn the basics. We want to really understand clinical trials and how to do analysis. And then as we progress, you tend to go one of two ways. Either you progress in kind of leadership where you start to kind of oversee teams of people, project manage deliveries, and then you maybe go into people line management, very different, and or maybe go on the more technical route where you get more and more advanced technical skills and you take on larger projects. So instead of writing code for, say, it's going to be used by a team of 5 people, you end up writing code that's going to be used in a product for 1,000+ people. So it becomes a very different like level of skills that you have to build software versus building just like single use code. In my experience or my personal journey, I went the leadership route. So I became a line manager in our statistical programming group. I was there for 5 years. I really, really enjoyed it. I loved working with people, helping them to develop and helping them to make the best of themselves. But actually, it got to a point where we had a reorganization, and I got an opportunity to move sideways into more of a product leadership role and into a very technical group. And I've really enjoyed that as well because I've stretched myself so much. I'd moved away a little bit from the technical side, getting back in now and seeing how in just those 5 years, all the tech has advanced so much. And now we've got AI coming and all these great advancements. So it's actually enabled me to get back to some of my earlier passion and get back involved there, whilst also still overseeing teams, still leading product deliveries, but not having the people management side of things. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities and it depends on the way you want to go. I've got colleagues as well that have gone into totally different areas of the business, using their kind of technical acumen to actually move into some of the more non-technical groups that could benefit from knowledge of kind of data scientists. So yeah, in large companies like the one that I work for, you generally find numerous pathways and there's no one size fits all.
Well, this sort of leads into another question that we got that's anonymous. So, Abigail, fantastic question, leads us into the anonymous question is it possible to break into the pharma world if you are a data scientist slash statistician with no experience there? I'm guessing that means no experience in pharma directly. And do you have any recommendations?
So on the people side, like one of my proudest things of Pharmaverse, because obviously like, Pharmaverse is there for the patients. Ultimately, we're doing this to help to speed up all drug submissions, not just the ones from Roche, Genentech. We're trying to help all companies to do submissions quicker and ultimately get treatments to patients all over the world a lot faster. Actually, on the people side, though, I've been really like proud to see where folks that aren't in the pharma industry have heard about this, and especially kind of younger generation that could, they really want to see open source thriving, and pharma doesn't have the greatest reputation for many reasons. So it's really nice to see a younger generation being attracted to our industry, and then through the open source collaborations, actually finding opportunities to jump in and learn the skills that will then be able to go onto their resumes and help them to find employment. So it's been really nice when you see somebody says, hey, I've been learning R, I've done it in academia, but I have no idea of the CDISC standards that we use, the kind of data standards that we use. I have no idea what you mean by clinical reporting, building analysis data sets called ADAM and very specific industry terms. But because they're passionate and they know enough about R, or they can add some value, they get started with the good first issues, the real beginner kind of things. And naturally, the teams that they join are then willing to give back to them and to help say, hey, go read, there's open training where you can learn those skills here. And people actually helping them to upskill in those new areas. And yeah, through this, we've seen a number of people come to the industry where they wouldn't have considered pharmaceutical in the past. So yeah, it's been really nice to see that anybody through open source can get involved. And it's daunting at first. I appreciate kind of just reaching out to people and kind of commenting on an issue on GitHub saying, hey, I'd like to help. It can be daunting, but I can definitely say within the Pharmaverse, there's a lot of teams that are already looking for that, and they're very willing to bring new people in and to help them to grow.
That's awesome. Do you see a sort of role inside of pharma organizations or teams that looks a lot like contributing to an open source package? I know I've met some people in pharma who are like, my whole job is actually just building and maintaining data tools in our packages for teams. And I've actually seen that in other scientific organizations as well, not just with pharmaceutical. So is it a good like one-to-one? Like if you really enjoy contributing to these open source packages, maybe there's a job that sort of looks like that in pharma?
Absolutely. So firstly, like the group I work in, the technical group, we have around 50 people and majority are building tools, not only in R, but Python and other languages as well. But yeah, the majority of us are doing work very much like that, software development. But then also we get a lot of people who are actually users of our tools. So the ones that are actually working on the clinical studies day to day and using our tools to run patient data analysis, they're actually starting to lean into the open source development as well, because they're loving the fact that learning software development techniques is actually helping them with their day jobs. So you can learn things like unit testing, just to throw one out there, which is going to really help you. That's a skill that can really help at any level of coding. So yeah, definitely there are opportunities there. And in an industry as huge as this, there always is going to, and data science, the value of data, it's at an all-time high. And when I joined the industry around 20 years ago, we were the folks in the corner that nobody wanted to speak to. We were like, hey, don't speak to those geeks. But it's really changed now. We can definitely see that data and data science has a huge value because people can see that by using our skills, we can unlock more value for the company. And now that AI is here and that's getting so much attention, they even come into us more and say, hey, we need the techie folks to help us to move our business forward. So it's a really exciting time for our industry, but I'm sure a lot of other industries as well.
It's very encouraging to me because I feel like a lot of people are like, I love doing this. But there's no way I'm going to be able to do this for a job. Like, oh, I really like contributing to open source. I really like developing these packages. And so whenever I meet people in pharma, I'm like, oh, that's where you should go, maybe if you want to develop open source stuff and have that be your job. All right, thanks for indulging that little very selfish question of mine. Thank you so much, anonymous question asker. Your question was amazing. If that was you, drop me a line on LinkedIn and be like, hey, that was me. All right, let's go to Slido here and find another question for Ross. Thank you, everybody, for all the wonderful questions so far. Don't forget that you can go upvote any questions that you like. Let's see. Let's see. Give me a second to read through some things. Um, Gregory, you have a question here that leads us in a slightly new direction. Would you like to unmute and ask that one live if you're still with us?
Yeah, I can swing it.
There he is. Hey, Greg.
I always feel like I talk about SaaS with my questions.
You do. It's okay.
I work with it every day, begrudgingly. But anyways, so how do you feel about the merging between the R and Python communities when it comes to pharma? If you do see that, I usually see whenever I talk to my pharma folks or anybody in the FDA or anybody over there is they're using either SAS or R. I don't know. I've kind of seen this trend recently, especially with the Apache Arrow ecosystem with analytics. You're really starting to see the language wars not really exist. It's like open source or proprietary is kind of what I'm starting to see. Do you feel like that's kind of something you see on your side of the fence as well in our land?
Yeah, great question, Greg. One thing I'd say is I like to say I live in our land. I like to live in open source land. So and you can absolutely open source SAS code as well and build industry collaborations around SAS. So yeah, I'm not here to bash SAS in any way. That's not my intention. What I see a lot of movement in our industry is we used to call ourselves like SAS programmers or statistical programmers, and we used to be like very narrowly focused. And the beauty of this is just purely making us step outside, think outside the box, and actually open ourselves up to new languages because we know there's going to be new languages advancing all the time. So really, when we're calling ourselves more like data scientists now, it's just about kind of opening ourselves to becoming multilingual. So a lot of companies in our industry aren't actually abandoning SAS. They're just entertaining R and seeing, okay, where are the areas like Shiny where it adds real value, and then also what we're looking at things like the Pharmaverse packages where there's a lot of reuse, but it just saves us doing something ourselves and building a suite of SAS macros that we would have had to build and maintain ourselves in the past. So a lot of people are using kind of SAS and R, but you mentioned Python as well. Python, of course, it adds value in numerous places like machine learning and other, and sometimes like, build certain systems and tools. Python is way beyond R. Maybe not always. I don't want to get into the Python versus R debate, but some of the statistical analysis pieces are naturally seeming more advanced in R or more easy in R. Some of the visualization pieces in R we're really liking, but actually there are definitely scope, and people in the team that I work with are definitely building tooling in Python. One thing that I will say though is people say, hey, and Pharmaverse is open to Python as well. We've got a couple of Python solutions, but some people say, hey, why are you going so hard into R and you're not kind of saying, let's all learn R and Python at the same time? For that, you have to kind of understand the culture of the group of people that we're working with have predominantly been like SAS programmers for many, many years. Imagine if like the way we sold this change was, hey, you're going to become data scientists, learn R and Python in the next 6 months, and then we'll tell you which one we're going to use and which task we're going to use. It would have just scared people, right? Because learning one new language, especially if you kind of older like I am, have been around for a long time, and I used that for many years, it was daunting for me to think, hey, I need to learn a language. They said, hey, you got to learn 2 languages. That's like a completely different selling proposition, and it would have affected our change management. So in reality, you had to look at, okay, for clinical reporting, statistical analysis, and clinical trials, R does a great job. And for the most of those tools, R packages, open source, collaboration, that's going to give us what we need. But there are areas as well where Python will give us something different. So let's invest. Let's see, okay, where's the value add? And then look at the solution. And I'm not convinced it'll stop there. I'm sure, I'm hearing already people in my team saying, hey, we've got to check out Julia, we've got to check out Rust, we've got to check out this, that. So yeah, it's always going to evolve. But Greg, I hope that helps answer your question.
I think that was great, Ross. And I really want to put my sort of 2 cents in there and say I find such value in knowing more than one data science language. It feels very expansive and powerful. And it is very daunting to think like, oh man, one language is hard enough to know and to feel expertise in. But knowing more than one, it just feels so powerful. I'm like, I don't feel limited by my skill set. So anybody here who is a sort of polyglot, R plus Python plus Julia, people like Mark Ricci is here. I know that he is. Marcos Huerta as well. They can tell you probably the same thing. There's Marcos saying, "Yay, Julia!" And we have somebody joining us, Frank Hull, next week, who same. I'm sure he'll talk about his sort of expansive polyglot skill set. Alrighty. Thank you so much, Gregory, for that fantastic question. And our next question
Libby,
is,
I was going to add
Oh.
real quickly, because I know
Yeah.
when I ask people to unmute and then they mute again for their question, it doesn't
Oh,
let
yeah.
them like jump in to say like, hey, thanks, or follow up. So I'll get better at asking people to unmute again if you want to add something. No pressure to have any response.
Yes. We don't always want to silence you when you're going, thank you, Ross, for that answer. Okay. We have another question. It is anonymous. Whoever asked this, thank you, because it's wonderful. I love this question. I think Rachel does too. And it's, do you have any top tips for contributing to open source? We just talked about how that can be a gateway into a career, right? But this person says, I would like to, but I have no idea how I would go about it. So I would love to know tips from you, Ross, tips from anybody in the chat. Go ahead and put them in. And then Rachel reminded me of something, which it's wild that I didn't even think about this, is that contributing to open source does not have to always mean code. Like if you are a person who gets other people together, Rachel and I kind of do that naturally all the time, that's also super valuable. If you're a person who can organize things, organize people, organize events, bring folks together, spark conversations, or just get people to work together on the same thing at the same time, project manage, all of those are super valuable. So Ross, how can someone get started contributing to open source if they've never done it before?
Yeah, great question. So, Libby, I do actually have a blog on this topic in the Pharmaverse blog site. So I'll share that with you later, and it'd be great if we can share that link out with everybody after. Essentially, and I see some folks commenting, definitely start small. Find something which you're passionate in or you have some background experience. Don't feel like you have to be an expert because you learn as you go, and be patient with yourself. I think knowing some basic Git is like very essential. So if you're coming at this totally new, you don't know any background, learning Git, because most of the, especially Pharmaverse and most of the open source work I'm involved in will be on some kind of Git open organization. So understanding Git is the way. You don't have to give code, as you said. So one really great way to start is just by commenting on issues, by trying out packages, by raising issues, raising bugs, giving feedback. That's a really good way to make connections as well, because often it's the connections you make with the teams that then lead to them wanting to kind of invest in you and help you to develop. Also, when you do come to take your first issue, I made this mistake. I went and took an issue that ended up kind of affecting like 5 different R scripts and needed a bunch of testing. And it was totally the wrong thing because I almost got scared off from the start. luckily I had really patient people around me. They helped me to understand. I made a bunch of mistakes and they were okay. Like this is part of the learning curve. So they coached me and they helped me to understand where I'd gone wrong. But if you can start with like a really small issue, so something like add in a few unit test cases or something like that, where you can help them to beef up their code coverage, or start really small, or the documentation kind of issues, and then build confidence, get to know the team. One of the best things about kind of open source is that you actually get to meet people from all different backgrounds, all different companies, and you do become like you feel like an actual team. Whereas when you work internally with people, hey, they're my colleagues. I'm meant to work with them. Sure, you're all putting your own time. You're all doing this through passion, and it makes such a nice camaraderie. You're not there because you're getting all paid to do that and paid to be together. You're getting there because you have a shared interest. So enjoy the fun of open source as well, and embrace those kind of relationships that you build. But yeah, the biggest thing is just don't be scared. Just put yourself out there, and people will be patient. They'll understand that you're on a learning curve. Be humble, be open, be transparent about where your gaps are. People will help you to get there. They certainly did with me.
Such a wonderful question. Whoever you are who asked this, thank you so much. And go look in the chat. Go look at what Catherine and Gerton is saying. Go look at Gregory's comments and Mike Smith's comments. Start small, documentation, helpful, great. Mike says, help write a vignette. The developer likely doesn't appreciate how hard it is to pick up the package from scratch. So helping write that, getting started with X package is a great way to contribute. I could not agree more. As a person who's approaching a development project with fresh eyes, you have more power than the developer has in that moment to actually write documentation. I'm a firm believer that the person who writes the thing or engineers the thing should probably not write the documentation because it's going to be full of holes. But it's really, really humbling to approach this big thing and say, I don't understand it. I encourage you to go ahead and do that anyway, because if you don't understand something, there's a high chance somebody else doesn't. You could add help there. And I also want to remind everybody that documentation is also open source. It's not private. You can go edit it. So like I'm going to put in the chat here a link to the Tidyverse dplyr main vignette. Like you can go do that. You could go like, I don't really like the Star Wars vignette. It's not helpful. It doesn't explain how this function works. You could contribute and say, hey, here's an update that makes it more valuable. Alrighty. Wonderful questions so far. And there is a anonymous question that is at the top and it has 5 votes. It's a great question. I think we've already covered it. So I'm going to go ahead and mark it as answered. It is about the sort of developer experience in the pharma industry. It does have one part that's slightly unanswered. So I'll tack that on here. And that is that they've heard the pharma industry can be more slow to build or adopt new software, and they're wondering if that's true. So that's a quick one we can answer. Do you feel like that's the case?
It's highly regulated, so
Mm-hmm.
you definitely you have to be careful, right? We're not going to be using a package which is just kind of straight out of academia, and only one person has ever kind of maintained it, and then putting that into our regulatory workflows. That ultimately, it's patient health at the end of the day, so you can't take chances. So absolutely, there's a lot more when we talk about using open source. There'll be a lot more talk of things like validation and having like solid infrastructure, reproducibility, all of those topics kind of come into it. So naturally, because of the work we do, yeah, there is a tendency to move slow. I wouldn't say it's moving slow for like over cautiousness. I think it's just to be sure and to verify the important work that we do. In recent years, though, I've definitely seen more appetite to speed up and more appetite to entertain risks. So one example is at Roche Genentech. We started off with a kind of more manual validation process, but we now have an automated validation pipeline, and that can kind of, yeah, very quickly you can bring new packages into our internal regulatory repo that users can use. And in most cases, actually, if you're choosing the right package, which is quite an established package, like obviously things like the Tidyverse, naturally, it goes through really quickly. And yeah, it's not often that we actually have to kind of put in a little bit extra effort to get over the validation hurdles. So yeah, I think it's a fair comment, whoever put that in, but I'm finding that we're moving faster than we ever have in the past.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that anybody in another highly regulated industry, like Lisa was here earlier in insurance, will understand. Yes, it moves very slow, but I also think another component of that might be the age of companies inside of an industry, like the banking industry, the insurance industry. When those companies have been around for 100 years, they are just like a bigger dinosaur that's moving more slowly, and change is slower to come because they're larger and older. So great question there. And I wanted to also call in Pavel really quickly, or just bring everyone's attention to Pavel's comment in the chat saying, "Hello, from one of the developers of Pharmaverse packages. Did we already mention our Slack channel?" Um, Pavel, if you are available to unmute, if you would like to talk about that, we could.
Yeah, so very quickly, hello everyone. I just
Hi.
wanted to highlight our Slack channel. So in case of questions, like you wanted to stay engaged with the developers or simply ask a question, what it is about, like I wanted to contribute, I wanted to learn, like give me some helping hands, like provide me some assistance with the very first steps. This is a very great place to learn, to connect and talk to us. So just wanted to call it out because I know that this has been used so far a few times and that's proved to be very effective. So just another communication channel to reach out to us.
Thanks, Paul.
Awesome.
And I should have mentioned that when Mike asked his question earlier about why didn't you just do a CRAN task view? Really, it's the community building that we're looking for here, and you don't get that from a CRAN task view. So yeah, the Slack community is a great example of that.
Yes, and hopefully we have the right link in here. Okay, Rachel, I think Rachel's got it. I was also looking for it. I think it is pharmaverse.slack.com for anybody who is listening and has our screen on another monitor.
Yeah, there's also, I should say, Libby, on our homepage, if you go to pharmaverse.org and you scroll down, there's like a list of FAQs, and these are the most common things. People ask, how do I get involved and how do I join the community? There's a
Oh,
link there, a
good.
direct link that will take you and add you to our Pharmaverse Slack. There's also a link for how do you get things into Pharmaverse, or how do you propose a package to be added. So that FAQ on the front page is also worth just visiting our homepage because there's some really nice visuals there. Like one visual is there's a really nice hex wall, which is dynamically created with all our packages. And I think we're on like 40 or 50 packages now, which is really, it's amazing how fast that's grown. But there's also a nice like network graph of people's GitHub profile picture, and it shows where they're working. So you can look to any single contributor to the Pharmaverse, and you can see that most often they don't just end up working on one package in isolation. They end up getting linked to other people via the community, and they contribute to multiple packages. And yeah, again, that's like the growth that we always hoped that we would see.
That's so heartwarming. It's so heartwarming. Thank you so much. Well, we have about 15 minutes left. If you have a question, get it in on Slido. And I wanted to call on Nathan to ask his question live because I have the same question.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, sorry, I'm just going to find my question again. So, obviously, data science in pharma, you think of randomized controlled trials. Is that still where the bulk of the focus is, or is work also being done with observational data? And if so, what approaches are being used to understand data from outside controlled experimental settings?
Yeah, good question, Nathan. In my space and the area that I work, it's definitely all around clinical trials, and yeah, mainly randomized clinical trials, still the gold standard. But there's definitely a lot more areas where we're looking at real world data evidence and observational studies. So it's definitely a growing area. I will say that it's an area where health authorities also have to evolve along with the sponsor companies, because it's quite often that we can show evidence from these, but still randomized clinical trials are seen as the gold standard. So I think time will tell, and I hope that these areas have more and more of a key role to play, because naturally we don't want to put we want to reduce the patient burden as much as possible. but it's definitely an evolving space, and we definitely need regulators to kind of really open themselves to looking at real world data trials as well, and looking at the benefits of looking at real world data, for things like historical controls and many other reasons. Yeah, hope that helps. I was going to say, hope that helps, Nathan, but then I think you'll get muted, so I'm going to stop saying that. Sorry, Libby. Yeah.
No, it's okay. Nathan, I really appreciate you asking that question because I really have the same question always. Every time I meet somebody from a new place, I'm like, oh, that person also does data, but that doesn't mean I know anything about what they do and what their data looks like, what their challenges are, what type of methods they're using, what matters to their leadership. Like I have no idea. So I really appreciate that. There's a little follow on an anonymous question, which is clinical trials experience a requirement for entering your field? Do you feel like that is? Nope.
No, I didn't have clinical trial experience when I joined. Yeah, so no, absolutely not. And we bring people from all kinds of backgrounds. So obviously, a lot of people come with maths backgrounds or statistics or medical statistics, but we get kind of computer science graduates or yeah, many different areas end up falling into pharma industry. So no, it's definitely not a prerequisite.
Awesome. Thank you. Alrighty. By this time in the hour, I feel like I usually have asked a career advice question already, or I'm burning to ask one. So I would love to know if you have a piece of career advice to share with everybody that has either been impactful for you or maybe it was shared with you and you really liked it and you like to pass it on.
Yeah, definitely. So I think learn from the people around you and learn from the people that you respect and learn pieces of their behavior and the way that they do their work that you want to aspire to replicate. I used to see great presenters and I would just watch them, for hours and pick little things of the way that they did presentations. I think I would like to emulate that. So I also worked under great leaders where, people would be overseeing kind of hundreds and hundreds of people, but they would still make you feel like they always had time for you. They would always be super approachable, no matter what level of seniority they grew to. I thought, wow, I really want to be that approachable, no matter what level I get to in this business. Also, I saw people go the other way, and I saw things where there were behaviors I thought, wow, I absolutely don't want to emulate that. There's a lot of egos in leadership, and there's a lot of people that actually think, wow, I wouldn't want to work with that person. So I always, try to then stay humble and try to stay approachable and try to actually know that you don't need to be the cleverest person in the room all the time. Actually, appreciate people around you, understand where they're better at things than you are, and learn from them. And especially when you become like older and you become more, you go up some kind of career ladder, it's sometimes it's very easy for you to rest on your laurels and think, hey, I've learned all I need to now. I can survive. Actually, go speak to the people that are coming in, the junior new starters, and they're coming in with things that they studied which weren't even existing when you studied. So they're coming in with all these new great areas that you can really learn from. But be open to that and don't feel like you ever need to feel embarrassed about asking kind of questions, or you feel, oh wow, I'm a senior leader now, so everybody should look up to me and they should respect me. Actually, people will respect you more if you show that humility and that vulnerability. That's how you build human connections. And I think that's the biggest thing that I'd say, especially coming from like a technical background. I think don't forget that the human connections are the most important thing about everything we do. So yeah, that's a really collection of little tips from my side.
I love that so much. I feel like I can co-sign on all of those things. The human connections being the most important thing, the vulnerability and humility being one of the things that drives connection, especially with leaders and trust. Absolutely. And there's another question in Slido that I'd love to tack on to this career advice question, which was, do you have any suggestions or recommendations for books or podcasts or anything else that you like?
Gosh, I'm the worst person to recommend podcasts. Sorry, I'm like, yeah, I really anti podcasts. The book I recommend is around like situational leadership. So the one around situational leadership 2.0 is really nice. So when I first became a people manager, I was like, what kind of leader am I going to be? What kind of manager am I going to be? And then actually, somebody who was like a great kind of mentor of mine, he was kind of coaching me, and he said, you need to be the leader that each individual needs you to be for them. So it's not like one size fits all. You can't just say, hey, this is my management style and that's going to work on anyone. So I did a lot of reading about situational leadership, and that for me really helped to kind of see that, you can have two people and they can be the similar level of experience, but you need to kind of support them and coach them in totally different ways. And that was something that really kind of stuck with me. So yeah, I definitely recommend if you're kind of moving into leadership, anything reading around situational leadership is going to be a plus. But sorry, I'm terrible with podcasts. Yeah, so I don't have any to recommend. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's okay. Well, I will go ahead and plug Kat Hicks' podcast, which we had Kat Hicks on before our break, so a few weeks ago. Her podcast is called Change Technically, like change, comma, technically. And I have been listening to it since we had her on, and I thoroughly enjoy it. So go check out Change Technically. And then also, we had a couple of people adding some suggestions in the chat. So definitely go take a look at the chat. Our community members are suggesting books and podcasts, which I will co-sign on all of those as well. Um, thank you so much for indulging our podcast and book suggestion cravings. I have a couple of more questions here that are about things that the chat might be able to help us with, but I do want to get your opinion on them as well. So one person had asked, Renee had asked, what data science professional bodies would you recommend joining? And somebody had replied and said, Informs is a good one. I used to be a member of Informs. I like that as well. But Ross, do you have any others in mind? Any associations or memberships?
Yeah, so the one that's really big in pharmaceuticals, and this is the one that I kind of have the largest connection with, is Fuse. So this is like pharmaceutical data science user group. Started off being very like pharmaceutical statistical programming focused, very much like clinical and statistical programmers, but it definitely broadened to bring in kind of data managers, people working in kind of different kinds of endpoints and digital health. So it's really kind of broader nowadays, and even feels like AI as well. You see a lot of topics there. So I personally really like that because it's people knowledge sharing, people getting together, people connecting, but in an area that's very relevant to the work I do. So personally, that's been great for me. And actually, one thing I should say is like Pharmaverse started as a very independent organization. We were just kind of building from the ground up, doing our own thing. And over time, Fuse saw the movement that we were having and saw how we were really influencing the industry. And they really did all they could to lift us up, and they really kind of supported us. They opened us up to their whole community where they had, like tens of thousands of people. They've been doing this so many more years than we have. And in the end, it kind of culminated with us becoming part of Fuse. And we're now kind of officially listed as like one of their working groups. It doesn't really change anything. We still do the same that we're doing, but they're kind of, if we need like funding or we need to run events or we need more outreach, they're doing all they can to lift us up and to help push the industry collaboration forward. So yeah, Fuse, have a kind of vested interest because they've done so much for Pharmaverse, so we're very appreciative.
Awesome. Everybody go check out Fuse. That is one that I have heard before, but had not really understood even that it was connected to pharma. It's just like a word and a thing, a conference that I see he talked about. So that's awesome. All right, we had a couple more questions that I think we can squeeze in, even though we only have a few minutes left, because there were two questions about AI, and I would love to just combine those together, and I'll put them in the chat as well. So one was, how do you think AI can help accelerate some of the bottlenecks you're facing in the pharma industry? And the other one was like, how do you see AI agents and workflows sort of influencing or changing the pharma ecosystem over the next 3 to 5 years, or the Pharmaverse ecosystem?
Yeah, great question. So I can say like it's already started to change. I think the majority of people working in data science in pharma now are using AI regularly. I use it daily. So firstly, it can be a great like coding assistant. So whether you use something like GitHub Copilot and it's there in your kind of computing environment, and day to day you're interacting with it, or it's just something like Gemini, or it's kind of something you're chatting to and you're having that kind of discussion and that context. I personally prefer the kind of discussion mode because I like to see, usually it's my prompt that's the bad thing. I haven't given it enough information. I've assumed too much knowledge, but quite often with some back and forth, and I kind of see through my knowledge and my experience, I know the bits where the hallucinations. And from the right discussion, I can get out some great code that I can reuse, or something that can save me a lot of time. So, but generally in our industry, it's kind of a couple of things. So one is around kind of knowledge management and trying to kind of help. There's so many processes, so many things that you have to learn in our highly regulated industry, and the human brain can only absorb so much. So having, AI kind of go over the massive amount of standard operating procedures and documentation that we throw at our people, it really helps for kind of chatbots and quick Q&A. Then also there's the coding assistant side. It's definitely helping people to learn new languages and to become more confident in coding. But the most interesting thing that I'm looking forward to is, as we're starting to kind of use these multi-agent approaches and kind of workflow automation combined with AI, because we're finding that now that we've got like this foundation of these amazing tools like the Pharmaverse, a lot of our work you can kind of harmonize and standardize to the point where you can automate. But then there's always like the 20%, which is like study specific, protocol specific, and you need that bit of context or understanding, or you need to make a choice. So if the AI can kind of make predictions there, well, ultimately, you automate the bits you can, but then the human is in the loop to ultimately make the final decision. That's the bit that's kind of taking us real forward, because yeah, automation kind of works so far, but then it always hits a bottleneck where you say, we can't automate that because it's always going to need some human input. But when you combine like automation and AI, the AI can make a prediction if you give it enough context. But as long as the human's there to kind of ultimately decide, is that the right prediction, or to correct the AI where needed, I think that's really exciting. So I see that it's just basically speeding us up. It's an accelerant. It's not. There's a lot of people out there fear it's going to replace us, and yeah, natural people. Yeah, I understand people's fear, but for me, I see we could do so much more. And in a field like data science, where our demand is only growing, there are so many other areas outside of clinical trial reporting that my company are crying out for data science skills, but we just don't have the resource because we're so focused on delivering our clinical trial submissions. So anything we can do to speed up and to make it easier to do our day-to-day work, it's opening us up to actually solving more fun problems, solving new areas, and bringing new areas of value to the business. So I find it a really exciting time. I also understand the anxiety naturally around people when they're facing this ever-changing technology.
Yes, I've definitely felt the anxiety too. Especially anytime anyone talks about vibe coding, I get a little nervous and anxious. And that's something that, I heard the term vibe coding for the very first time on the Data Science Hangout from Abigail Haddad asking a question and me going, wait, what is vibe coding? Okay, everybody, this has been wonderful. We're at the top of our hour. I know everyone's going to have to jump for meetings or lunch. So I will say thank you, Ross, so much for hanging out with us. This has been informative and wonderful. I hope everybody enjoyed it. And I will say there's little 3 dots at the top of the chat. Go click that if you want to save the chat. Click the 3 dots, save chat. Ross, thanks for being with us.
No worries. Thank you for having me. Take care, everybody.